is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Deadwood, Season 1, Episode 4, Here Was a Man. In this episode, things take a turn that I did not expect, but apparently would very much have expected if I had read a little bit of history. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. And yeah, this episode, spoiler alert, Bill Hickok gets killed by a fucking nobody. And it's so, like, the whole way that it's done is so excellent. Because not only did I not expect it since, like I said, apparently, like, this is, like, right at the top of his Wikipedia that he died in Deadwood. And I'm going to read something that Patrick Kelly sent me after this. But the way that the show handles his death to show exactly like the reactions of everybody who knew him and what they do or think upon finding out just the bare minimum of news. Like, they don't know what went down exactly yet. They just know what's going on. I think was a really masterful stroke of television, just the like panning around from person to person. And I also really like, and I know that this is a historical fact, so I'm not commending the writing on this, but there's a show that I won't go into what show it is because it might be being covered and maybe somebody might get spoiled. But there is a show in which this dude is always fighting against the main character. And this dude winds up being killed by one of the main character's lower henchmen, for lack of a better phrase there. And when he is killed, he's like, no, this isn't how it goes. He's supposed to kill me. You don't kill me. And then he dies. And that's kind of how I feel about this, that like this fucking guy, Bill Hickok, he's the one. And it's prefaced by this like really awesome scene. This is just a proof of what you can do if your script is like practically flawless and your actors get what's going on. Because the scene between Wild Bill and Charlie Utter before Charlie leaves is pretty spare, really. There's not a lot of dialogue. There's barely any physical movement. They're sitting in chairs, not even looking at each other. And yet, it's such an emotional scene. And it's so, like, you just are so invested in both of them because you like both these guys. And while Bill is obviously the one that you like admire for his skill and you sort of like idolize because everyone else does, Charlie has a lot of sense, you know? Charlie never feels like a sycophant. Charlie never feels like somebody who's just there to wipe Bill's ass. Charlie really cares about Bill like as a human being and is just trying to get shit going for him in a way that's like sustainable and healthy. And it doesn't even, obviously they wouldn't be putting it in those terms then, but he's a really good example of like non-toxic masculinity. Somebody who's just fucking, like this kind of shit is gonna hurt you, man. Like, can we figure out another way? And it's really hard to watch him want so badly for Bill to fulfill potential in this other way and Bill to not only not be interested, but finally have to sit him down and be like, dude, I know what you want from me. I know that you think that I have the potential for this in me. But the truth is, that's just not who I am. And I can try as much as I want to be a whole damn other person. But every day, I'm going to fail at that and then feel like shit about myself. So why don't I just accept who I am and stop pretending? Now, I feel a couple ways about that. I don't know enough about Bill, but I feel like the show has a little bit of an opinion on this. I feel like the show thinks that Wild Bill only believes that that's who he is. When he says that, like, you know, just going and gambling and basically letting myself go to hell the way I want to. I think that he has bought into, like, the worst version of himself in other people's eyes, which is why I think he goes from, like, you know, physically helping out Saul and Seth to being criticized by some rando on the street and immediately being like, all right, well, I'm going to take off and go play cards and drink whiskey. It's like he feels that somebody fucking came up to him and called him out on him playing a role right now. And it's really, like, it's hard because it's like, I just didn't expect this kind of psychology on this show, especially regarding somebody like Wild Bill, who it would have been so easy to oversimplify and paint with just one big fucking brush and make him a sort of a cartoon. A Yosemite Sam, if you will, which I'm actually wondering now if that's not sort of who Wild Bill is and sort of who he's based on. But, the fact that he has this conflict, that he has people looking out for him who are trying to, like, help him along the way, and he can't quite get there, that there's this constant pressure of other people, like, talking to him and about him, and people who have seen him kill someone, like, that's a particularly heavy thing, that you can't just live alone with your sins, so to speak. You can't just know that you hurt somebody and hold that yourself. Every time that you've killed somebody, it has been a very public thing that people feel weirdly like they have ownership of and can talk to you about freely as if this wasn't also very traumatic for you. A lot of the time, because either those people do not understand what it is like to have killed a person at all because they have never done it, or because the people who are talking to him who have killed people don't have the conscience that he clearly has about it. This is not a man who kills lightly, and this is not a man who starts fights for no reason, and this is not a man who kills without feeling anything after. And they don't get that about him, and I feel like that's simultaneously something that insults him, and also that he's beginning to buy into, well, that's what everyone sees, so maybe that is what I am. Maybe everybody else is seeing the bigger picture better than me. And I have to say, I feel like they give this impression in this episode when Bill is shot that Bill let it happen. And, you know, obviously, historically, there's no telling what was going on. I mean, there's the accounts from, you know, whoever was there, but there's no film to, like, decipher his body language. But in the show, we have seen him react with incredible speed to a perceived threat and to have a sort of a sixth sense about when somebody is here to do him harm. And it's like he's goading this guy because he knows it's going to, like, stoke some sort of fire in his opponent at the beginning of the episode. And then later when he's sitting at the table, he sits with his back to the door, which, like, that's not a thing that he does, right? It's just, so he does that and he hears him coming. You see it register in his eyes that he heard something behind him. Both the men sitting at the table with him are looking over his shoulder with horror on their faces. And he does not even turn around. I have to say, I think that it was supposed to be like he let himself be killed because he was kind of done. That he had, like, reached a point where he felt like, this is it. Like, it's not going to get better than this. Things aren't going to change from here. And the fact that he said, can't you just let me go to hell in my own way? And Charlie finally is like, all right, I guess I can, and leaves. I feel like Charlie is going to be unsurprised when he gets back and Bill is dead. I could be reading way too much into this. Certainly possible. But I just felt like there was a way that was shot and a way that it focused on certain details of the moment it happened that was telling me something very specific. And it makes it all the sadder for that, you know, because everybody is going to feel all kinds of different ways about this. And I'm wondering if anybody's really going to get it except for Charlie. You know, there's going to be people like Jane who are going to, like, swear vengeance, of course. And this dude kind of chose his path, I feel like. And, you know, not to say that absolves the man who fucking shot him, because most definitely not. But I also feel like there was a sort of surrender, you know. So yeah, that was just really fucking unexpected. And like I said, the scene between him and Charlie, it's a shame because it's like you can almost see Saul and Seth getting to the place that Bill and Charlie are in. Like Saul being the voice of reason who's trying to keep his friend like under control a little bit. And Seth being the one who has sort of given up and is feeling really like disillusioned and disappointed in himself. And I'm just hoping that is not what winds up happening. But I could easily, you know, Bill is probably like roughly 10 years, a little less older than Seth, I would say. So there's still time, you know. I don't know that Bill was like this 10 years ago. I would guess not. So anyway, I felt like I just wanted to deal with that right out of the gate. There is so much to cover in this episode. And if Bill hadn't died, this entire conversation would have started off with me talking about Brahm's wife, whose first name I always miss. But I'm going to get there in a second because she is a fucking bamf. And I love this. But first, let's start talking about Bella Union, because I am really like sort of, I am watching this space, the Bella Union space, to see exactly where the plot goes here, because I'm not sure what they're going to do with it. I'm very curious about it because it's, they're setting it up. Bella Union, you know, is sitting right across the street from the gem. And we had Al going in supposedly to like discover exactly what it is that they overlap on to make sure that they're not encroaching on one another's like games or women or whatever. And he says that, but then we find out later that like they played craps at the gem the night before. Like he says something, I think, to his cook. Or else it's his cook spying at Bella Union, which I'm not entirely sure which one it was. This cook, by the way, I don't know what he's going to do, where he fits into this thing, but the show is obviously planning on doing something with him because they gave him so much time, so much screen time this episode. So we start off with the poker game against Wild Bill. And we just have this guy that he keeps calling Jack. Loudmouth drunk is what he was credited as when I last checked. But this episode, it says Jack. And Bill comes up winning this game. And, you know, had been on such a losing streak that Jack really got sort of like overconfident on himself. And when he gets beaten here, it's obvious that he lost fucking like everything and starts to lose his temper a little bit. Bill tries to sort of like take pity on him and give him something to go have some breakfast because he's like got nothing. And this dude can't just take that as like a real kindness. He says it in the moment, I thank you for that kindness. You just bought yourself something with that. And there's like a moment of like, maybe he's actually saying, maybe I can kind of get past this since you were nice to me for a second. But when you, like, look at it later, you realize when he said you just bought yourself something with that, he means you humiliated me a second time. You didn't just beat me, but then you had to fucking, like, show off the fact that you were going to give me charity and that, like, point out to everybody that I was going to eat today because you were nice about it. And that's even more insulting. So I'm going to get you back for that one. And I think that has to be more than even losing in the first place, the catalyst to him for going after Bill. And it's just, you guys, it's just so hard to watch this kind of thing because you just want these people to, like, not cave to the worst part of their personality. Do better, you know? But it is not to be. And when we see him later, he's, like, eating at some stall that's obviously making stew out of whatever they can find. And he's, like, disgusted by the fact that he's been reduced to this and starts to really, like, think about it for too long. He gets real racist as well, which is fucking par. And that is when he decides that he's going to set out and do something about this. As for Bill, after he finishes here, he leaves and goes and talks to Seth, who is in the middle of building the shop still, even though it's the middle of the night. And he says that it's cooler now and quieter. There's not as many people walking around. And Bill comes up and hangs out with him for a little while, tells him to please call me Bill, not Mr. Hickok. I can't tell you guys how fucking adorable I find Timothy Olyphant in this role. Like, you know, he's obviously younger here. He's real skinny, which is not something that I'm usually, like, into, but he's so, like, wiry and capable looking that I'm like, actually, this works for me. And he just has this sort of wholesomeness, even though he's someone who we just saw shoot down a man, that feels like sunshine. You know, he smiles at Bill a couple times, and I just wanted to be like, now kiss, because they have such great chemistry together. They bounce off each other so well as actors, and you really get the sense that they are probably friends in life as well. Don't know if that's true, but that's how it feels. It feels so real, which makes it even worse when Bill is gone, because you really see in this scene that Seth has grown attached to him and smiles at him as Bill walks away in this, like, kind of indulgent, affectionate manner that's just heartbreaking when you realize what happens to Bill later. And he talks about the fact that, you know, his nickname when he was a kid was Sloth, and that the choices for the nicknames were among the 7 deadly sins. I guess I got out before the others surfaced, which I liked. And we have this, like Seth says, my wife and kid are in Michigan. Hope I can bring them out soon. Which I have to say just sounds like the worst idea. I know that that's the point of this. Everybody calls it a camp. I keep saying it's a town, but nobody else seems to really think of it that way. Bill here says camp seems like a good bet. But this place is just such a fucking no man's land that bringing your wife and child into it feels like fucking mayhem. I just can't imagine doing that at this point. And maybe that's what he means when he says, I hope I can bring him out soon. It's just like, I hope shit settles down. I hope that it's not this, like, wasteland of crazy forever. But at the moment, I'm just like, dude, don't do it. Don't bring him out here. And Bill assures him they'll get the Sioux making peace. Pretty quick, you'll have laws here and every other damn thing. I want to research this, but I don't, because I know it will probably spoil me. But I am really curious about what actually went on with the Sioux in this area and how this went down. I assume that the Sioux got screwed over because that was pretty much how things functioned. We will promise anything and then we will not do that. Or we will promise anything at the point of a gun at which you have no choice. Or we will just kick you off the land and take it. Or any other version of taking advantage of people and stealing. So this conversation is just a really nice little moment between the two of them, like being friends. And Bill hanging out simply because he likes the company. Because he wants to, like, be around this person that he gets along with, who, as Charlie said, doesn't want to blow your fucking head off. And he tells Seth that his wife is waiting to hear from him about, like, whether or not to come out there because she runs a circus. And just the whole thing is just so, like, I know I used the word cartoonish before, and I know that running a circus is a real fucking job, but it just sounds so made up and goofy. But it's, you know, this shit was real. But yeah, this moment where he says, I'm flat out tired. That's the first clue, right? I'm flat out tired. And of course, Seth thinks he's saying, I'm tired and need to go to bed. So Seth says, turn in. And he says, I believe I will. In this very studied sort of way. And it just feels like a real moment, you know, when you rewatch it. I really like shows that reveal more on a rewatch, you know, that just have that kind of foreshadowing. Tells him that his pop used to call him Kite, which is sort of a weird nickname, but okay. And yeah, then we have the scene between him and Charlie. And Charlie is heading out to Cheyenne and was supposed to head out 2 hours ago, but he didn't want to leave without saying goodbye to Bill. And apparently is aware that Bill is heading down a path that ends in one way. It's really, you know, it's the kind of thing that I feel like if you are friends with somebody who has sort of like self-destructive tendencies, you probably do sense this sort of thing. And yeah, the fact that they are sitting on opposite sides of the bed, not talking to each other, it's just really just so well done. It's such a good scene. I really love it. And he finally just gets up and is like, well, I guess that's that. So then we go to E.B. and Al. And Al is talking to E.B. about getting the gold claim back. And then they see, he feigns surprise about this guy who fell off of a cliff that Doherty is leading back into camp on the back of his horse. My reasoning was get the dude his money back, keep his wife from asking questions. Well, now that is unnecessary. Make the offer to the wife. And he wants E.B. to make an offer of $20,000. We find out later that is not what he did. He offered 12 because he's trying to, quote, do Al a favor and then get himself a reward out of it. Meanwhile, Alma, Brahm's wife, sees his body and knows what the fuck happened and passes by Doherty without even looking him in the eye because she's not a fucking moron. And throughout this episode, I was just so impressed with her and sympathetic to her. Because this bitch is not here to play. She isn't going to just take their money because in her mind, I know they killed him. I can't fucking get paid by the men who took his life. Like, that's just crossing into some other territory. And of course, it's a mystery to Al why she won't take this money, which I think is just so great. Like, of course he doesn't understand that. Of course he doesn't get that she has more grit than to just turn tail and run home again after what just happened. She is going to figure out a way to be smart and also keep her honor intact in her mind. And Al, that's just not something that has ever mattered to him at all. He can barely, So the whole way that this all plays out, she goes downstairs and EB asks if she'll get the doctor. If he wants her to get the doctor. And she says yes. And he does. And then she meets with the doctor privately. And I love how she just fucking closes the door in his face. And the doctor tells her that as far as he can see, the injuries were consistent with the fall that Doherty reports happening. And she says, as far as how he came to fall, and the doctor says, I have no opinion on that. And she gets real mad and says, really? Because you were full of opinion when you were telling me about me taking the medicine that I'm taking. You had all kinds of thoughts on it. You wanted to theorize wildly and speculate. And now all of a sudden, that's not an option anymore. Interesting. I feel like that's probably because somebody is holding you to saying or not saying certain things. And I would like to know if that is true and if that person is anywhere nearby and if it's a particular man. This scene made me want her and the doctor to become like a fucking team so bad. Because I love how he does not underestimate anyone and obviously is not a misogynist. He can see immediately. She knows what the fuck is going on. She knows who did it and she knows why. And she's on top of this. And he says, you're a bright woman, aren't you? Must have gone through hell here. And he gives her another bottle of laudanum and says, go on home. Which sounds patronizing, but is fucking just good advice at this point, you know? And he's right. She should. But I also don't want her to. Because I want her to, deal with this situation, you know? And I like her. And can I just say that the actress playing Alma, Molly Parker, I'm going to look at her real quick and see what else she was in. The Wicker Man, Goliath, there's all kinds of stuff. Oh, she was in Dexter, okay, and House of Cards. That's where I know her from, is House of Cards. I love her so much in this role because she has done something very special, I think, in making Alma feel like she is made of fucking steel. Like, this is a woman that you might be able to bend in all sorts of ways, but she ain't never breaking. That's not happening. And she has done that while keeping Alma so restrained and so soft-spoken. She barely raises her voice in this entire episode. When she talks to the doctor is really the one time. And after he leaves, you know, she throws the bottle of laudanum against the wall. And that's the only, explosion of emotion that we get from her at all. And otherwise, she just holds back. And I think it's a beautiful character decision because it's simultaneously effective in getting across how controlled she is and how aware she is of her position, and also how women in that world had to function and had to learn to function in order to be respected, and how she is trying to use the fact that anybody, of course, is going to underestimate her because she's a woman to her advantage as much as she can, while not necessarily playing dumb, but at least playing sort of like submissive. And I say playing submissive because of the sort of interaction that we saw between her and Brom right before he left. She asks him to make her a promise that he'll take his walk before he decides what to do. And Brom says something like, so in case I reconsider. And she smiles and says, if only to perfect your arguments, which is such a beautifully diplomatic way of handling this man, which is 100% what's happening here. He is being handled. She is the one in control. He is the man who wears the pants to the world. But as far as the one who has the sense, who has the understanding of the situation, he comes to her telling her with all confidence that they're going to fix this problem and he's going to come back weighed down with gold. And this bitch knows what the fuck is really going to happen. His death is horrifying, but it's not shocking. She knew this was likely to happen, which is why she urged him to give it up and for them to just leave. And the fact that he won't listen to her is endlessly frustrating because she's just so much more aware of the stakes and just a better judge of people, you know? And that's what makes going to Bill such like a genius move on her part. And thank goodness Bill connected her with Seth, because otherwise she'd be so screwed. I don't know that she's not screwed anyway, but the way that this has gone down just feels really like, I don't know. There's something, she is in such a fucking terrible position here. He's, as she says to Jane, I have no one else in the camp. She really doesn't. And I can't imagine being in that kind of situation, because like nowadays, if I were to move somewhere or, you know, suddenly have to be by myself somewhere, there are all sorts of resources. You know, I can email, I can call, I can text and get in touch with people to just comfort me, get advice from them, get easy like money transfers nowadays. And obviously the very basics of like law enforcement and contacting them when there's, although in this case, you know, even in modern times, that's not something that's necessarily super helpful to everyone. There is just a lot, but she is in a situation where she is in a strange place. She has no friends. She has no way of getting in contact with her family other than like letters, or I don't even know if like telegrams were invented by this point. I don't think so. Whatever it is, it's a slow moving process that will take some serious time. And she is at everyone's mercy, and she knows it. She could be killed and there'd be nobody to do anything about it. There's no recourse. There's no, you know, it would just come back to her family that, oh, there was some terrible like Sioux Indian attack and she got slaughtered, and oh, what a shame. And there's nothing they could do to really like push that except to send out Pinkertons to investigate. But she's dead by then. It's too late. And that is really terrifying to me, that she is so without any sort of recourse or safety, and going to Bill was the only move she could think of. And it's a smart move. Don't get me wrong. It's not her fault that it like didn't exactly pan out here, but at least it led to some connections being made that could help her in the long run. But I'm just really curious what she's going to make of it that Bill was shot. Like, the guy who killed Bill is such a nobody, and everybody is aware of who he is in that he keeps on playing poker against Bill, right? Like, so everybody knows him as that fucking dude who can't keep his mouth shut, who keeps on digging himself into holes, But is she going to wonder if he's connected to Al in some way? Because, I mean, there's a real vibe in this camp that everybody is connected to Al in some way. I mean, unless you're with Bella Union. And I can't help but think that there has to be that kind of suspicion on her part, that she's wondering exactly how unconnected anyone can be who has been here for any length of time. Trusting Bill. Bill just came into town. She knows that there's not a pre-existing relationship between them. So I'm going to talk about Bill and his agreeing to help her real quick. Because I really love the scene where he goes and talks to Al. Bill agrees to take up her cause. He can see that she's in a precarious position. I think that he, I don't want to say has a soft spot for women because there's no feeling of like paternalism to it. I want to say that he respects that she's smart enough to know that some shit's going down. And he agrees to go and talk to Al to feel out exactly what's happening because she gets the sense that Al is the one behind the offer. Even though it's EB who comes and makes the offer to her, she knows that that's probably not who's got that money. And side note, I am very hopeful that her friendship with Jane blossoms and becomes this whole thing. Because I cannot tell you all how much I fucking love this friendship that is beginning to bloom between the two of them. Two women from such vastly different backgrounds with such totally different value systems, interests, understandings of the world. And Jane does not have any sort of snobbery Alma does not have any sort of snobbery towards Jane. And Jane doesn't seem threatened by Alma the way that she could. She could potentially be hostile to a woman of Alma's stature, sort of preemptively assuming that a woman like Alma is going to have preconceptions about her or is going to have, certain societal expectations, and that's not happening. There's no sort of friction between them at all, which I really love. It would be very easy to have them sort of like mistrustful of each other, but Alma is sort of in this place where it's like, here's another woman who in some ways is just as vulnerable as me, even though she's got guns and even though she talks a big talk. And there's a kinship there just based on that. And then when they have that like scene together and Alma is telling her about her marriage to Brom, it's a really like sad, touching moment where she's explaining, my father had these terrible debts and marrying Brom was a wonderful solution to that. And there's no feeling of her being like mercenary. This was how it was. You married people for alliances. You married people to cement business decisions. You married people because it made sense to prolong your line and your name. It was not about, and a woman who made decisions based on that was not a gold digger. That was how you used marriage to your advantage. That was the one advantage that women had, was playing who she got to marry. And she didn't always have a choice in that, but you could do the best you fucking could. And marrying Brum was a huge help because it made it so that her father was able to pay off his debts. Now, her father did not like the fact that Brom was coming out here to prospect. And he said something to her about it and said, like, picturing you out there, it just makes me sick to my stomach, basically. And she tells Jane that her response to that was, maybe he'll die. In a sort of hopeful way, she says this. And obviously, now she feels horrible about it, and that's part of like when she's talking to Bill about helping her and how taking money would make her feel even more complicit. Bill asks her, how are you complicit in the first place? What do you mean more complicit? And she just says something about how a wife always feels some responsibility for her husband's decisions. But this is really what she meant. I feel complicit because in a way I was hoping for this. And now that it's happening, this is not what I wanted. Not really. But I said that out loud, and you don't get to take that back. And I know I said it, and my father knows I said it. Like, I can't run from that. And I feel her on that. Like, I'm sure all of us have had things like this where we like sort of either voice or think very clearly and deliberately to ourselves how we would like something that's sort of shameful, that we are hoping for it to happen. And we know it's shameful, and we're not proud of it when we say it, but we're being honest for a second. And then it happens, and the, like, sort of horror that you have as you realize, like, oh my God, I can't believe I was that selfish and that stupid that I actually entertained that this was something I wanted and would volunteer for at any point. It's gross. So the fact that she admits to Jane that she had this conversation, to me, really cements that there's something like a real friendship brewing between the two of them. And I am not excited to see the turn that Jane is going to take now that Bill has died, because she is obviously in love with him in this way that's like very respectful of the fact that he's married. You know, she's not trying to like talk shit about his wife to him or anything, but is still sort of hopeful. And I feel like pathetic is too strong a word, but there is a bit of pathos there nevertheless. But she is going to lose it. You know, she isn't going to, there won't be any question in her mind that this guy needs to die, and probably painfully. And I just don't know what to make of what could happen with this little girl that she has like adopted, who apparently is going to make it through because she had a really bad fever for a while and now she doesn't. I don't know what on earth they're going to do with her, but I feel like she can't hang around. Like, maybe she can, but she can't speak English. You know, it's going to be a weird deal there. But nevertheless, so I said that I wanted to talk about Bill going to talk to Al, and then I got off on this whole other thing with Jane and Alma, but Jane is the go-between initially between Alma and Bill, so I kind of had to talk about her and the way that she reacts to everything, and the utter respect with which Alma speaks to her. You know, no condescension, no judgment, no anything, just very, like, treating her like a fucking person. It's really not much to ask. So, all right, Bill and Al. She gets Bill to agree to go and press Al on whether or not he is behind this deal that that EB is trying to make with her. And Bill does something really smart. I loved this. And it's just such a shame. Everything's a shame. Bill goes and pushes Al on whether or not he is behind this. And the whole thing starts off in such a way because Bill hasn't been in the gem so far, apparently. And Al is laying it on really, really thick when he comes downstairs, and it's just like, I have been crying into my pillow at night, trying to figure out how you've been here for so long and haven't even set foot in my fucking place. The whole deal. And I didn't know how he was going to play this. I didn't think he was going to be as straightforward as he was. He straight up is just like, so is this you or not? Which I was like, oh, okay, I guess he's just going to fucking ask. But then the way that it all goes, where it's like, Al explains the situation as it looks to Bill. Tries to be like, okay, here's what happened. And tells him, you know, the way that it's supposed to have happened. And Bill lets him talk. And then he says, all right, well, I will go and present your story to the widow. And Al says, well, I hope you present it in a favorable fucking light. And Bill says, what's it worth? And Al looks at him like he never saw him before and says, what? And at first he says it in a tone that's like a dangerous tone. Like, what did you fucking just say to me? But then an instant later, when Bill says again, how much is it worth for me to present this in a favorable light? Al says, well. Like, gets this enormous smile on his face. A smile, but like in his eyes as well, which is really fucking rare for Al, let me tell you. And there's this like light shining. You can see he suddenly feels like he understands Bill, which is obviously deeply important to him because he has been trying to figure out Bill's deal since he got into town. So here's this man now standing in front of him speaking a language that he very much understands. And there's a combo of like, oh boy, you might be on my side of things and we could do all kinds of shit together. And also, oh, thank God we speak the same language and I know what you are now. It's such an amazing moment in the show that when the widow does not agree to sell right away, Al is disgusted and begins to spout off to EB about how obviously, if he said he was going to present it in a favorable light, and then he comes back and he has not done that, or then the widow comes back and says that she's not going to sell, he has not done that. So he's coming at me in some way, and I need to figure out what to do, and I might just have to kill the guy. And EB rightfully is like, you're going to kill him. Really? That's what you want to do? How is that going to dispose the widow towards us? How is that going to help our cause in any way? And Al starts to be like, if a man's coming at you, what are you supposed to do? And EB loses his temper and says, let me tell you something. What are you supposed to do when a colleague or friend or whatever you want to call them suddenly begins to think that everybody is coming at them, even though that's not what's happening? And I love how like vehement EB is in this moment. He really like gets so irritated with Al. He loses his temper completely. And Al looks at him in genuine shock because it's clear EB has never stood up to him in this way ever. This has not happened. You know, EB is spineless. We've seen that. But he has managed to make things work so far. And here he is finally saying some shit that Al needs to hear. Now, the irony is, Bill is kind of coming at him. EB's not right. But it is understandable why EB is frustrated, because Bill wasn't coming at him this whole other time that Al for some reason thought Bill and Seth were like in cahoots together. So this thing where it's EB losing his temper is misplaced, unfortunately. The time for him to have this talk was earlier. Now it turns out Al's actually right. But setting that aside, I love the fact that EB loses his temper this way. I find it really amusing. Like, he just is so fucking over it. You know, dude, can we not, like, always be ready to kill everyone who comes and talks to you and tries to make any deal with you? Like, and he's right in just a business sense, because who's going to want to deal with Al? Everybody's going to turn up dead right after they have a conversation with him and something goes even slightly wrong. Nobody's going to want to fucking, like, it's going to become a superstitious thing, you know, if anything else. So yeah, he's in the right on this, and it's just really like funny that he's in the right but also wrong. I enjoy that deeply. And Al seems to fucking hear him, you know, and just decides to take out his frustrations on poor fucking Trixie. Oh, you guys, I don't even know how women in the day dealt with this. Like, and if you're a woman, you know what I'm talking about. Even after having sex with one person and not having done it in a few days, I'm sore. I can't imagine doing it for a job multiple times a day, every day. Like, you must just be wrecked, right? Like, just so sore and tired, and never mind diseases and all this other thing. Just setting all that completely aside, the simple physicality of it. Oh my God, you know? And like Trixie, he says, I've got to fuck something. And then calls Trixie, and I'm just like, oh, something nice, you know? Not even like a person. And we get this like long drawn out sex scene between the two of them, which I was not a fan of because I don't need to see Al fucking anybody. But that, like, Al seems to have sort of calmed himself and I think become convinced that maybe Bill isn't coming at him. So when he finds out that Bill's dead, it's probably not going to be welcome news by that point, you know? I've been putting off talking about Ellsworth because I'm mad about it. Ellsworth, baby, what are you doing? Like, this motherfucker could have just kept his mouth shut. That's all. He says something about the key to a long life is keeping your nose out from where it doesn't belong. And then he shoves his nose where it doesn't belong. You didn't have to tell them that you saw anything. You didn't have to do this. Nobody asked for this. Nobody suspected this. I don't know if he thinks there's a possibility that Doherty saw him in the bushes. But the fact that you're not dead and not being questioned or beat up probably indicates they didn't see you. Count your fucking lucky stars and move on. Either you decide to leave because you are afraid for your safety, or you pretend nothing ever happened and hope that they know, like, nothing about it. Does he do that? No. Say somebody thought I saw something I shouldn't have. Whereabouts? On a ridge. A man pushed off, or whatever the hell else. If it meant my leaving camp to prove I could mind my own business, it'd be a friend who told me that, instead of throwing me to the pigs. You could have just left. But now they know there's a live witness running around. What are you fucking doing? He's acting like he's playing this smart, and he's doing the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard. He's trying to blackmail them, even though his whole thing is like, well, I'll never tell because I know not to stick my nose where it doesn't belong. But I'm like, then what are you doing? Like, and Al seems just as baffled by this later. He's just sort of yelling about it, like irritated. So yeah, that fucking thing. I don't know what's going to go on there. And I'm not excited about it because Ellsworth is like a likable dude. But here we are. All right. Let's talk about Cy Tolliver and the Bella Union. Getting to the end of this, going to have to wrap. But this man, Cy, is throwing so much money around. He's like paying almost triple what Al's paying for the doctor to come and visit his ladies. He is about to throw all kinds of money at the newspaper that would purchase your advertisement in a matter of space, wildly incommensurate with, and you know, the whole like, this newspaper man, oh, he's gonna have to wind up dead. I don't know what he's doing. He seems like poking his nose where it doesn't belong. It's a matter of time before that begins to happen. But Cy is just throwing around money in this manner that is so frivolous. That's not the word I want. It's unmeasured. He's not being careful. I feel like this is going to bite him in the ass. He's made deals with people for certain amounts, and now he's got somebody with disease in his place because, spoiler alert, this man who comes to visit him, what is his name? Andy. Andy is fucking either got like measles, smallpox. I'm not sure what it is he's got. But this is clearly contagious. Like, this is a problem. And him being in this hotel / brothel is soup's bad for business. So they're trying to keep it as, like, under wraps as they can. But how long can that happen? And the doctor is told that he fell. But so he can't diagnose him properly because they aren't giving him the facts on what's going on here. The whole thing is so weird and so, like, frustrating. And Sai is irritated because Joni, like, he said to her, I don't feel like Andy looks too good when Andy first showed up. And she said, well, he looks like he's been traveling on a fucking wagon for a week. What do you want from the guy? And then it turns out he's sick. And Sai is sort of like, I fucking told you he did not look right. And I guess his thinking was that he wouldn't have let Andy stay with them if he thought he was sick. But I don't know what other option there is. Like, stick him across the street in the gym, which would have been amazing, to be honest, if they knew he was sick and then sent him to the gym. Woo! But, this guy is obviously, like, gonna die. I feel a little bad, too. This actor looked familiar to me, actually. Let me look at what he's been in. Fight Club 24, Good Wife, Zodiac. Nope. I haven't seen pretty much any of these. But I can't figure out. There are so many plot threads happening in this episode. I can't figure out where any of them are heading. So, all right. I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit to after this guy fucking shoots Bill and runs off, and everybody is aware of what's going on. Like, it's clear. The whole town's chasing after him. He tries to jump on the back of a horse, and, like, the saddle isn't fastened on properly. Like, it looks like the girth isn't even buckled, so he just falls right off, thank goodness, and does not get away. And they're dragging him to whatever sort of, like, mass judgment, like, kangaroo court situation. I mean, there's no need. People saw him. He's not going to deny what he did, you know? He's going to probably try and defend what he did. But I'm really, like, I don't know what this is going to be. And then we have some dude who comes riding into town holding the decapitated head of someone. I believe that it's supposed to be a Sioux, Native American. But again, another thread that I'm like, what on earth is happening here? And then we have poor fucking Seth walking into the bar where Bill was shot, and Bill is still moving and twitching because apparently he got hit in, like, the spine. So he didn't die immediately and just slowly bleeds out. And Seth kneels by him and, like, just really gets teary-eyed. Poor fucking Jane looks like she's gonna just crumple up into a ball and, like, fucking disappear. And she fucking chugs, like, half a bottle of whiskey in one shot. Jane, girl. There's so much happening, you guys. And I don't know now what the fuck Alma's gonna do. You know, like, because, like I said, she might think that he got targeted by Al. Like, there's so much. So, anyway, guys, I'm gonna leave this here. Thank you again very much to Patrick for commissioning this. This show has been so much fun to watch. I can't wait to watch the next one. I'm very excited. And I'm excited, too, because Patrick has another episode of Deadwood scheduled for later this week. So normally I have to wait a whole week between. But I have one on, I think, Friday. Yeah, Friday. at 12 p.m. So I get to watch another one so much sooner than that. And then the next week there's 2, and then the next week there's 2. So I get to watch them a lot sooner. I'm very excited, guys, because this show, it's so good. And it's really nice, too, because even though this show has a lot of violence and can be kind of depressing, it's still so, like, action-packed and exciting that it's something I know I'm going to want to revisit, because Owen's been saying how he wishes he could watch it with me. And I'm like, I am fine with rewatching this. There's some stuff I've covered that I've really liked, but don't want to go back to, like The Wire, which is a super amazing show that I will never watch again. And this is definitely not that. This is something that I'm like, oh, I can't wait to watch this episode again. This one's so good. So, yeah, thank you, Patrick, for introducing me to this show. I hope that you guys are enjoying my coverage of it, and I will be seeing you all again on Friday with a new episode. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.